This is Gregory Shelton with Historic Living, Modern World. Today we're at Crow Farm and Winery, an award-winning winemaker that started out with soybeans that ended with making amazing wines. Let's go check it out. Hello, Judy.
Hey, Greg. Good
How
to
are
see
you?
Welcome to Crow Vineyard and Winery and Crow Farm Stay Bed and Breakfast.
Thank you. Our drive-in today was so beautiful. The vineyards are unbelievable.
Yes.
Thanks for having me. I cannot wait to see what you guys do well.
Well, let's get going. Come on.
Let's do it.
With me. On our farm, we actually have 365 acres.
Okay.
12 and a half acres is in grapes, and we have 8 different varieties of grapes that we have planted here. Our goal is that we use the farm to create an experience for agritourism for people who come visit us, and we make sure that we are sustaining the farm, and we are also educating the public when they come and spend some time with us.
Well, the value that I see of Crow Winery is very, very strong in the area and the region because you do more than just wine, and you're a self-sustaining farm. So what does that feel like to not only worry about growing grapes with grape wine? You have Angus beef, you have a bed and breakfast. What does that mean to the day-to-day for you?
What that means is
A lot of work, right?
A lot of work, but our core beliefs and principles as we created this endeavor about 13 years ago when Roy and I got married was to take the best of what we have here at the farm and just enhance that. So we had 10 Angus beef, now we have 100, and we have lovely pastures and they're all grass-fed. We had 365 acres of corn and soybeans, now we have 12 and a half acres of grapes, but we still have corn and soybeans. And corn and soybeans help sustain the farm to keep us going too. We also have a 5,000 case production winery. So
wow.
2,500 cases we make for Crow. And then the balance of the tank space we use to make wine for other individuals in the area.
So not only do you do great things for yourself, you're helping other wineries do great things for themselves.
It's really important. This is a new industry in Maryland. When Roy and I got into the business 12 years ago, there were about 65 wineries in Maryland. Now we're up to about 125.
Wow.
So the industry has grown, and the market for good quality dry style wines has increased, and we love being a part of that.
That's a great thing. And it's always great to know that other wineries are trusting you to seal the deal on their wine and to actually have it bottled and made, right?
Right, bottled, made. Sometimes we sell grapes to other wineries in the area, and sometimes they're making wine here.
What does it mean to have your winery on your family farm?
Well, what it means is our name is out there.
Right.
And personally, we're invested that if somebody's going to taste whether it's Crow beef or Crow wine or stay at the Crow Farm Stay experience, it's going to be the best possible product or the experience that they can have, because it's got our name on it. So that's what it means to us. It's a little extra, making sure, it's like when the in-laws are coming home for the holidays, you make sure everything's just special for them. And that's how we feel when guests come here and visit us. They're like our in-laws and our relatives, and when people leave, that's what they tell us, whether they spent time in the tasting room, that it was a fine experience and they really love meeting the owners and getting to know about the winemaking process, or whether it's somebody staying at the B&B.
Well, that is one thing that when I drove in, I've obviously looked at the idea that it's just fields of grapes, and you can see that the wineries expanded upon that. But the idea of having Angus beef and the idea that people can spend the night here at a bed and breakfast, that's a lot of work. I know B&Bs are something that people put a lot of effort into making sure it's beautiful, because when they stay here, part of it is they get to walk the fields, right? So right. It's a great experience.
So you noted that earlier in one of our conversations that we have a lot of grass. It's about 2.5 acres of grass. So we keep the grass cut, looking good. We try and make everything look good, and that's really part of the sustainability part of a farm.
Right.
If you have outsiders coming in on a regular basis, you have pride and you want to keep it looking good.
Sure.
So it's helped us having visitors here.
And we were both obviously raised on farms, and when we were kids, the look of the farm wasn't as much of a big deal. It was just making sure it ran smoothly, right? You know, getting the horses, the cattle, the chicken fed. Now the look is almost just as important as anything else.
Yes, yeah. I mean, my mother did an excellent job in the gardens and the flower beds, and she did an excellent job feeding everybody. And that's what I like about it. You know, I just like feeding everybody and making sure everything looks really beautiful.
Cool. I gotta say, one of the most beautiful things about Crow Winery is the farm. It reminds me of being at home. Black Angus, cows, horses, just a beautiful space. Brandon, what do you got going on today, man?
Hey.
Such a beautiful place.
Thank you, thank you. We are here, we're doing some shoot thinning.
Okay.
We're kind of laying out what we are gonna have for our fruit for this season. So we go through, there's this fancy little tool here, and we can rub the bottom of the shoots here and get any of these suckers off of here. And then we go through and we will selectively pick out any shoots that might get in the way of our fruit production. So we're looking for our fruit to be growing right in this zone right here off of our fruiting wire. And then, so we'll just pluck these off. If there's two in the same space, that's just gonna be a little too tight. So we go through and kind of select. So we're right at that point where we're kind of laying out what we're gonna grow for the year.
So this is an important step of growing healthy vines for you, right?
Oh, definitely. This is a key part of viticulture practice. So what we're trying to do is create a open canopy, so we're not overcropping, we're not putting too much stress on the vine. We want a balanced vine. So that means a healthy canopy, and that really starts with shoot selection, laying out what fruit we think the vine can produce, and so really what we're looking for is some nice airflow. You can see these shoots are kind of blowing in the breeze right here, which is great. We have a nice breezy site here, and you want things to be able to dry off of that morning dew, especially in the middle of summer when we get a little morning dew. You want the fruit to be nice and dry, you want airflow, and you want sunlight. So we've got our sunlight coming through, and it'll help to ripen that fruit up.
Strange question, because we all, as Americans, we always think about French wine being the beacon of taste, flavor, and just style of wine. When you talk about the dryness, I know French grow a lot of lavender. There's a lot of dryness there. Is that something that you'll be emulating, the conditions in France for a great wine?
So stylistically, we would be considered New World style wines.
Okay.
But we are striving to, as the French would say, to express the terroir. So terroir means the growing climate, the growing region, and so we're trying to encapsulate that. We have a specific growing region here in the Mid-Atlantic on the eastern shore of Maryland.
So Brandon, when you talk about old world and new world style of grape growing and winemaking, you have France, you have California. What's it like to grow grapes in Maryland?
So growing grapes in Maryland and the greater Mid-Atlantic region is quite a bit different than, I would say, growing grapes in California. California's their growing regions tend to be a much drier climate. We're more in a maritime kind of climate, so we can get more moisture throughout the growing season, and that can change the profiles of the wine. It allows us to be more varietal and year to year specific with our wines. So you're going to see differences in our growing conditions from year to year. We're going to have some changes in whether it's we get moisture or we get a really hot, dry year. So those conditions influence the grapes that year. Whereas in California, a lot of their regions are dry growing regions, so they don't have the same influence from moisture or
Interesting, and that tells me that if I was to come buy wine, if I was going to buy a 2016 bottle of wine from you, you can actually say that was a very dry year, or we got loads of rain in the. So there's a story there, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, so that's considered vintage specific. So the vintage is the year that the grapes were grown.
Okay.
And so we are very vintage specific with growing grapes here. So you're gonna see, especially because we're a small boutique winery, you're gonna see those influences and they're gonna play out in the wines. And so we may say, oh my gosh, 2015 was an excellent year. It was really dry. We produced some really nice reds. We might say, 2018 was much cooler. The acidities were a lot higher because the fruit wasn't at peak ripening, but it produced some really nice whites because you're looking for acidity in a lot of white wines.
So tell me what types of grapes you guys grow on this farm.
So we have about 12 acres of vineyard here. In this block where we're standing, this is our Barbera. We have 2.5 acres of Barbera. Barbera is originally a red Italian variety, kind of a medium-bodied, high acidity wine. Just to our right over there, we have our Vidal Blanc block. All the way up front, we have a Chardonnay block. We grow Sauvignon Blanc in the back. We also have Malbec, Merlot, Pinot Gris, and Cab Franc.
Wow, so you have a wide selection there, huh?
Yeah, and so the expectation is that people are going to come out and want to taste a variety of wines. So we're not just pigeonholed into making stylistically one wine, one varietal. We have to create an entire portfolio to kind of appease our customer base. Yeah.
So Brandy, you have such a beautiful assortment of grapes. How hard is it to take care of each one in their own little lane? Is it tougher? Is it easier? Is it the same?
So each variety we handle it very similar, and actually each variety ripens at a slightly different pace. So it allows us time to get through and work through a block. So say the Vidal Blanc, if you look over there, it hasn't grown up quite as high as this Barbera block. So I can work through this Barbera block and then move over and work through the Vidal block. And then they'll also ripen slightly different. So at the end of the season, when we're getting ready to harvest, we can kind of stage out and, always the first grape out of our vineyard is our Pinot Gris. We will harvest that out first, and then we'll do some of our sparkling wine picks, and then we'll move into our white wine picks, and then usually into rosé or braisé, and then usually into our red wine picks. So the specific work that goes into managing the vineyard is we do basically the same stuff. We'll go through, shoot thin, we'll de-leaf the fruit zone, I'll have to hedge. All of that is done similarly. It's just a slightly different time period when it's needed.
Gotcha. So when we look at these plants, they're very obviously, to me, very thinned out. I know you're removing the suckers.
Yep.
And you had this apparatus here because they're obviously going to grow up through that.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, how old are these grapes, the plants now?
So I planted this block in 2010.
Okay.
So we're going 12 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, and so typically by year 3, you can start to get a good harvest. Year 5, they really hit stride, and
okay.
And you can kind of count on a steady harvest off of them. And each variety will determine how much fruit per acre you can produce.
Oh, okay.
So our Vidal block, can easily handle 4 tons to the acre. Our Barbera tends to be about 3.5 tons to the acre, whereas something like our Cab Franc or our Merlot, we usually get about 2.5 tons to the acre. It's harder to ripen some of those later season red varieties. So we try and thin a little bit more fruit out of those guys to get them to ripen.
Right. So when we have the idea of this is almost a picking length or harvesting length,
yep.
What type of year will you be looking to get into this region here of leaf?
We will get into managing the upper part of the canopy here shortly. So as I go through and I thin, I will go ahead and unclip this wire here. And
Okay.
I can actually remove the wire and I will drop it down onto the ground here.
Okay.
And as these shoots continue to grow up, I will scoop the shoots in and I can clip it right back into place here. You can see these clips here. You can envision the shoots would be inside of
Right.
these
So you're
catch
you're
wires.
supporting them, right? So
Yep.
that's-
And so what I'm trying to do is keep them growing vertical. This is a vertical shoot positioning system, trellising system. So I want to keep them all vertical, and then that allows us to go through and actually leaf, or really it's de-leafing. We call it leafing, but it's de-leaf the fruit zone. So actually once these cones produce flowers, they will, they're self-fertilizing, they'll fertilize themselves, and then they will start to grow the grapes. And once the grapes are starting to grow and ripen, we'll actually go through and pull some of these leaves off around the fruit to help it ripen up.
And that is very similar to a tomato harvesting. If you want big, beautiful tomatoes, you get rid of the smaller ones that are massive,
Exactly.
massive amounts.
Yeah, it's the same idea. A lot of people grow with a vertical shoot positioning trellis system for wine grapes. You'll see in the Finger Lakes region where they grow some more of the commercial table grape styles. They'll grow with an upper canopy and they'll actually have the fruit up high, and then their canopy will grow down towards the ground. So all their green leaf areas down there and their fruit's on the top there. And that's mostly because they have a much higher crop load, and it allows them to have, they're right up on top and they're getting a lot of sun going across them.
Gotcha. When did you realize that I want to be a winemaker or a wine grower?
Well, we batted around the idea for a couple of years. So we had kind of had a conversation with the family talking about diversifying the farm and looking into growing grapes. Our original thought was we were going to just grow commercially, and then we got the confidence to say, okay, we can actually convert this into making wine, and so that was a very quick transition from the idea of, in 2010, growing grapes to our actual first vintage of wine that we made was in 2011.
What did you have to do to learn how to become a winemaker here?
So the interesting thing is a lot of that learning was on the job. We did have some great consultants to help us get started. And I get this question a lot, and people ask, well, did you go to school to learn viticulture? And the answer is no, I didn't. I learned on the job. I read a lot of books, and we brought in some really good consultants to help us. I think if we were trying to set up this business on the West Coast or in Europe, the expectation would be, oh, you'd need a master's degree in viticulture and enology. But I think on the East Coast, there's a lot more of that pioneering spirit of, hey, we've been in agriculture for years. We know the land, and this is just, growing grapes is just a different aspect of that farming or agricultural practice. We can figure it out. And yes, it's been some trials and tribulations, but I think with the right help and the right team, we've made some excellent wines.
Your wines are award-winning wines, and I think the idea of what you've learned to get to this stage is momentous. And I think from that perspective, I don't even think there's a question of where that came from, because this is an amazing farming district. There's farms as far as the eye can see, and Maryland is a proud state when it comes to agriculture.
Oh, definitely. We have the Chesapeake Bay 2 or 3 miles from here, and so we have some amazing resource there with oysters and rockfish. So if you look at it as a holistic approach, this growing grapes and making wine seems to fit right in with the food industry as a whole, and having that to go with your crab cakes or rockfish. It's an excellent white wine.
There's no doubt the Crow Vineyard and Farm is a beautiful place, and it's a sight to behold. But it's really about tasting the wine. So Brandon, let's taste some wine.
Okay, so we're going to do a tasting. We're going to taste our Barbera three different ways.
Okay.
So like I was saying, we were in our Barbera block, kind of looking at how we manage the vineyard. And so here you get an opportunity to taste our sparkling Barbera, our Barbera Rosé, and our red Barbera. We do our sparkling Barbera in the traditional method champenois, where we do a primary fermentation in tank and a secondary fermentation in bottle. Cheers.
Thank you. Oh, it's
So you
delicious.
get a nice crisp fruit. That yeast component plays through really nicely. You get a little bit of baker's yeast. The finish is very crisp. We have kind of a hint of melon, I would say, a little bit of melon and a little strawberry, and maybe a hint of raspberry on the palate. But this is an excellent summer wine, really kind of fresh and
Cold
bright
and very fresh. Wow.
Yeah.
Very seasonal.
So we making this sparkling Barbera Rosé is definitely a labor of love. We do as I was saying, we do the traditional method champenois, where we do primary fermentation in tank. So we'll ferment the wine completely dry, and then we will add yeast and sugar back to the wine. The sugar is to feed that yeast, and it will re-ferment in bottle, and that's what is creating these beautiful, nice, sparkly bubbles. And then we will do the process of disgorging. So basically we have to remove the yeast from the bottle. So we'll riddle the bottle upside down, remove the yeast, and we kind of do this whole riddling, disgorging process. It's all hand done. So we don't use a machine. We just, three of us usually get into the winery, and we will freeze the neck of the bottle, shoot the yeast plug out of the bottle, add our topping wine to it, and cork and closure it, as you saw here. So
The one thing that I see through every phase of Crow Winery is the commitment to doing great things and not sidestepping and going right to the heart of making great things. If a winery is going to make a shortcut in what you just said, in the sense that you guys are going the extra mile, what would I likely taste, or what would I see as those shortcuts?
Well, one of the shortcuts with especially making sparkling wine, you would need a little bit of specialized equipment, but you can add carbonation to a tank of still wine and carbonate it that way. And so
Giving it the sparkling
giving
feeling,
it the
right.
sparkling
Sure.
effect. Now you won't get that same play with the yeast in that secondary fermentation. So you won't get those nice yeast bread notes that play with the wine really nice.
Okay, so what do we have next? Because that was delicious.
Okay, so we're gonna do our Barbera Rosé. So we tasted it in sparkling form. Barbera Rosé, Barbera tends to be higher in acid grape and lighter in tannin, so it plays really nice and makes a beautiful rosé. You'll taste some nice strawberry notes, a little bit of raspberry playing in this wine. Nice crisp finish.
When you talk about tannins, I know that tends to be I'm assuming that's the bitterness of things like this. How much does that play when you try to remove them, but you have to have some of it in there because that provides the body to it?
Yes. So all grape skins, they have tannin in them. Depending on the variety may have more tannin, like a variety like our Cab Franc or our Merlot will tend to have more tannin than something like our thin-skinned variety Barbera. So there's not quite as much thick skin on a Barbera grape as there is with a Cab Franc, say. And so that when we speak about tannin, yes, it creates mouthfeel. It builds some of the structure of the wine, and it is really known for in red production. It it gives you that kind of drying off on the palate.
Gotcha. The notes that people expect with it.
With a bigger red wine.
Gotcha.
Yes. Yep. Shall we taste?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So usually I give it a little swirl in the glass, get the aromatics to kind of lift out of the glass.
Sure.
And then
I smell it.
nice floral bouquet there. Little strawberry aromas.
I definitely smell strawberry. Oh, so smooth.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's very nice. Nice crisp finish, a little bit of minerality in the finish. And then, I'm getting nice raspberry playing on the palate, a little hint of strawberry, touch of melon, I'd say, like maybe a little honeydew. So that this wine is an amazing seller for us. It does, it's just one of those very easy, presentable wines for a nice summer afternoon. It gets pretty hot here on the Eastern Shore, and this wine tends to.
This to me is something you would have with a fish, with maybe a salsa on top of some sort. Maybe it's a fruit salsa or a mango salsa or something. Because the citrus notes tying it together is just beautiful.
Yeah, that would be a really excellent pairing. Yeah.
I have to say rockfish, of course, because that's where we are, right?
Yep.
No other fish other than rockfish. Beautiful. That's a beautiful wine. Wow. Love it.
So now we're going to move on to our red, and we're doing Barbera as our red varietal. So the nice thing about Barbera is it's super food friendly. That's one of the reasons we planted it. We were thinking about growing grapes that are very food friendly and presentable, and so this wine is a nice medium-bodied red wine. It is aged in French oak for about 18 months, and it's when we make our reds, all of our reds will get crushed and sorted. We have a sorting system, so we hand sort everything. We'll run it through that, and then it goes to tank, soaks for a few days, cold soaking on the skins, and then we will start our fermentation process by adding yeast to the tank, start fermenting, and usually that fermentation and soaking period on the skins is about 25 days, and then we will rack that off. Racking means we will move the wine, which is now wine after we've been in tank, move that to a separate tank, leaving any sediment behind, and then it goes to barrel to age.
So when we talk about French oak barrels, is that how much does that change the flavor of your wines?
So oak can add a lot of different flavors, and depending on the toast levels of each barrel, so we tend to use different toast levels with oak. So you can have a medium toast level, you can have a medium toast with toasted heads, which would create a little bit more charring effect in the wine. It might bring out some more notes of caramel or toffee, the kind of darker
burnt
char
flavor.
Yeah. And so it kind of plays with the wine a little bit. And then you can even go untoasted oak, or you can do convection toasted oak. So we usually do a blend of medium toast to some toasted heads, and it just we like to have variety, and then we sit down at the blending table, and then we can say, okay, in
make
this
some
wine,
big decisions.
in this wine we can blend these with these toast levels together.
It sounds like an important step for Crow Winery that might differentiate yourselves from different wineries in the area, or at least in Maryland, right?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the winemaker stamp is being able to play with it in the cellar and know your variety that you're working with, know the grape that you're working with, but also knowing what kind of stylistically you're going for.
Sure.
So you can always
an end goal.
Yeah, you can always make a stainless red, and it's it's going to be bright and fruity, and it's not going to have as much
Have some punch,
complexity
right.
in the mid palate. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what are we going to expect before we dive into this? What are we going to see?
You will get a kind of bright kind of cherry, a little bit of raspberry in this wine. You'll get some nice smokiness, being aged in that French oak, and then you should get a light tannin, a little bit more acidic, but it's not going to be a big tannic wine. It's going to
Gotcha.
be kind of a nice summer wine, easy, palatable, great with food, great for pastas, pizzas, things like that. So really kind of
Let's go in.
easy red wine here.
It smells great. Wow. Still has a fruitiness to it, right?
Yep. So it still has some nice, nice cherry raspberry component there. A little bit of like spice to it.
Yes.
That toast from the toasting into the barrel, you get a little bit of spice, and that's kind of the oak playing through. That's a little baker's spice, and then I get a hint of tannin, but it's not aggressive tannin.
For sure.
So I could definitely see this pairing really nice with, some maybe some fresh marinara with a little bit of fresh basil and some nice pasta.
Could you find this with a red meat?
You could, yes. I would say some nice leaner. I would say
Okay.
a little bit of
Filet.
leaner cuts. Yeah,
Maybe lamb?
would do nice. I think with some of the fattier cuts, you would probably want a little bit more tannin to kind of
disrupt.
Work with,
Yeah, gotcha.
to work with that.
That's a
But,
delicious wine also.
Yeah.
Wow. The smell's wonderful, the flavor's great.
You get a hint of like toasted vanilla. You get a little bit of vanilla in that when you smell.
Yeah, I feel like a
vanilla
dark. The first note that I received when I smelled was the dark cherry that you mentioned. And that came out. Obviously, the toasted barrel side of the oak.
Yeah.
It gives you the kind of the depth there, which again is a great. It's married together. It's just a beautiful wine. Love it. Brandon, the farm is amazing, the winery is amazing, and most importantly, the wine is delicious. And I really want to thank you for making the time, man.
Well, thank you for coming out, and
Thank you.
we really appreciate it. And I'm glad we got to taste some wines together.
Sounds good, man. Thanks again. I can't wait for next time out.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I had such a beautiful day today with the Crow family. They have an amazing winery and a beautiful farm. If you like what you saw today, click like and subscribe, and make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram. This is Gregory Shelton with Historic Living, Modern World, reminding you, whenever you do something, always work to move people. Cheers.